19-year-old kid with back-to-back poles and back-to-back wins. Now, he's the championship leader. Not just any championship leader, but the youngest in the history of Formula One. A record that belonged to Lewis Hamilton since 2007. Kimi Antonelli, he came to Suzuka as the hot hand, the guy everyone was watching, but he left as something else entirely. He left as the man who might just be the future of the sport. And along the way, a kid, he nearly died at the spoon corner. Because these cars, they are just too fast or too slow for their own good. Welcome back. This is The Art of Motor Racing, and this was one of those weekends you'll remember.
Perez goes off the track, off goes Leclerc, through goes Hamilton!
Right, Japan, Suzuka. One of those circuits that filters. You can't fake pace at Suzuka, the S's, the Degners, 130R. They'll find you out. Every lap, over and over, for 53 laps. Coming into this weekend, George Russell, he led the championship. Mercedes had won both the races. And Silver Arrows, they were doing what nobody wanted them to do, making it look too easy. But Suzuka had a few things to say about that. Max Verstappen, he had 4 consecutive wins here. 2022 through 2025. A man who owns the circuit. Sorry, owned. Past tense, as it turned out. The 2026 regulations. These wild harvesting energy deploying monsters have scrambled everything. New pecking order every weekend. Closing speeds that are giving engineers nightmares. And on lap 22 of that race, they give us a crash that nobody should forget quickly. But let's build to it because this story, it earns its ending. Three practice sessions, and we had three different fastest drivers. FP1, George Russell on top, P2 Antonelli, P3 Norris. Mercedes won 2, but McLaren was sniffing around. Alonso wasn't even there for it. He had flown in late after the birth of his first child. So Jack Crawford, he took the car. One of those mandatory young driver runs. And you got the sense that Aston Martin, they were just simply grateful to be on that track without falling off. FP2, different story. Oscar Piastri, he went fastest. McLaren finally showing some genuine pace. Antonelli, he was P2, Russell P3. That gap between the top teams, worryingly small from a Red Bull perspective. Verstappen, he was nowhere near the front. FP3, and here's where the weekend truly started making sense. Antonelli, he went fastest. Russell, half a second behind. Leclerc P3, 8 tenths back from the Italian. Mercedes were moving clear. The race pace looked ominous. Norris, he had a nightmare Friday. ERS issues, running at the back, the kind of Friday that makes a reigning world champion reach for the anti-acids. The picture emerging, Mercedes were looking dominant as ever. Ferrari and McLaren, they were somewhere behind. But Red Bull lost. Genuinely, worryingly lost. Saturday qualifying. But before a single lap was set, there was a regulation tweak. Ahead of qualifying, the FIA, with unanimous agreement from all 5 power unit manufacturers, they reduced the maximum permitted energy recharge in qualifying from 9 megajoules to 8 megajoules. one whole megajoule doesn't really sound that much, but the reason behind it mattered because the drivers had been complaining that so-called super clipping, the speed they lose while harvesting energy at full throttle, it was robbing them of the ability to actually go flat out in the qualifying. Well, less recharging allowed, it means less harvesting, means more actual driving. The FIA called it a targeted refinement and said further discussions are scheduled in coming weeks. Translation: they know this isn't perfect, and they're patching it as they go. And Kimi Antonelli, he did something quite remarkable. He made qualifying look routine. 1 minute 28.7. First flying lap of Q3. That was it. That was pole. He didn't improve on the second run after he had locked up at turn 11, but he didn't really need it. Russell, his teammate, the man who led the championship, he was nearly 3/10ths of a second behind. Nearly 3/10ths. That's a statement. Russell had been complaining all session. Oversteer in Q1, understeer by Q2, and something wrong with everything by Q3. They'd made some changes to the setup after FP3, and the car had gone sideways, metaphorically. We need to understand, he said, he wasn't wrong. Piastri P3, Leclerc P4. Norris bounced back to P5. Hamilton was P6, Gasly P7, quietly excellent again. Hajar P8, Bortoleto P9, and a very young Albert Lindblad P10. Then Verstappen, car is completely undrivable, suddenly he radioed. Q2 exit, P11 on the grid. Red Bull, they had bought a floor upgrade, and apparently it made things worse. How? Nobody quite knows. Max included. Ollie Bearman, he was out in Q1, P18. Shock, given his strong start to the season. He'd been up inside the points all year, but Suzuka on Saturday proved to be the least of his problems come Sunday. And then there was the footage controversy when F1 posted Antonelli's pole lap. Eli fans, they immediately noticed something was off. The in-car camera, the one that shows you every inch of the pole lap, it cut away to external trackside shots right as Antonelli exited the spoon curve. No 130R, no final chicane. Precisely the two sections where super clipping is most savage. The car audibly gasps for power. The speed, it nosedives. F1 said it was a technical fault with the camera. Maybe. But here's the thing. Fans had noticed the same pattern all weekend in practice coverage. Wide shot suddenly cuts every time when the car approached 130R. Whether it was a cover-up or a coincidence. Optics, they were catastrophic. You don't get the benefit of the doubt when the thing you're accused of hiding is also the thing you've been desperately trying not to talk about. Well, the grid was locked, and we had a 10-minute delay before the race even started. A Porsche Carrera Cup car had put it into the barrier at turn 12 during the support races, and repairs were needed. Everyone was waiting, and for the first time this season, all 22 cars, they were on the grid. First time we'd see the full field properly together. The air of the occasion was real. Lights out, and Kimi Antonelli, from the pole position, he went absolutely nowhere. Wheel spin and wheel spin. Pole sitter, he dropped like a stone. P6 before the first corner. Russell alongside him on the front row. He also lost ground, down to P4. Oscar Piastri, he absolutely stormed into the lead from P3 to P1 on the run to turn 1. Beautiful launch, the kind of start you'd want to see in your highlight reels. Leclerc, he moved to P2. Norris, he grabbed P3 from Russell. Hamilton, he was P5. Antonelli, P6 and immediately hunting. And by lap 2, Antonelli had dispatched Hamilton. And by lap 3, Russell was up to P3 as well, past Norris. And by lap 4, past Leclerc too. Silver arrows were on recovery. Both cars moving forward, but Piastri, he was pulling away. He wasn't panicking, he was racing. This looked like a McLaren victory in the making. The middle phase of the race, it was like a chess match, and the board was about to get flipped. Russell had hauled himself up to second and was catching Oscar Piastri. He was genuinely threatening. On lap 8, he momentarily took the lead, held it for a breath before Piastri fought back. McLaren man, he wasn't giving up this easily. Antonelli, meanwhile, he was sitting fourth patiently, he was executing. Lap after lap, he was managing his tires, managing his position. He and Hamilton, they were running in their virtual lead after others pitted. But real race was happening ahead of them. Norris pitted first, lap 17. He put on hard tires. Leclerc was instructed to respond. Came out ahead of Norris. Piastri pitted, emerged 5 seconds clear of Leclerc. Then Russell pitted from the lead on lap 22. Everything changed. Because at the Spoon Corner, Ollie Bearman's race, and frankly, possibly his life, was hanging by a thread. Ollie Bearman had started the race at 18th. He was having a quiet race, no drama, just taking off laps. Then he came behind Franco Colapinto's Alpine on the flat-out run towards Spoon. Colapinto was slowing to harvest energy. These 2026 cars, they do that, lift and coast at the end of the straights to recover electrical charge. However, Bearman's car was in deployment mode, pushing the speed differential more than 50 kilometers an hour. Colapinto later said, "Even spinning, he overtook me. Imagine the speed." Ollie Bearman, he had nowhere to go. Wheels on the grass. The car, it stepped out at over 190 miles an hour. He went hard into the barriers, a 50 G impact. As it was destroyed. Luckily, Ollie Bearman, he limped out from the wreckage, unable to put his weight on the right leg. No fractures, just a knee contusion. He was lucky, genuinely, scandalously lucky. Because science was right when he said, imagine if it had been Baku, imagine Las Vegas. No runoff, no escape roads, just walls. And that closing speed and a split second of physics that doesn't really care about consequences. The FIA, they put out a statement, said they'd review. Team said they had warned. Drivers said it was only a matter of time. They were right. This needed to be the last time anyone was that lucky. Well, safety car was deployed on lap 22, and Kimi Antonelli, he was about to win the race. The safety car, it changed everything in an instant. Piastri had pitted, Russell had pitted, Leclerc had pitted. All three, they were on fresh hard tires. But they'd pitted before the yellow flags flew. And Kimi Antonelli, still on his original mediums, running effectively in the lead. He pitted under the safety car. Free stop. He emerged back in P1. Unbelievable, screamed Russell over the radio. He wasn't wrong, but that's racing. The restart came, Antonelli led, and from that moment, he was simply the fastest car on the track. Gap building lap after lap. Piastri was second. Leclerc fighting off Russell for P3 in a battle that involved some clever radio tactics, some very frustrated Mercedes engineers. Final margin 13.7 seconds. Antonelli over Piastri. Leclerc P3, Russell P4, Norris P5, Hamilton P6, Gasly P7, Verstappen P8. Checkered flag at Suzuka. And Kimi Antonelli is the youngest championship leader in the history of Formula One. Let's talk about what actually happened here. And I mean, actually. Antonelli? Yes, he got lucky. He was the first one to say it. We were very lucky. But here's the thing, he was in the position to get lucky because he was managing his race correctly. He hadn't pitted. He was patient. And then, when fortunes came knocking, he opened the door fully. The restart, it was immaculate. Second stint, it was dominant. 13-second margin doesn't happen by accident. 19 years, 6 months, 25 days. He's now the youngest person to lead a Formula One World Championship. Record previously owned by a driver he replaced in Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton. He held the record for nearly 2 decades. Russell, this was painful. He pitted just 1 lap before the safety car. 1 lap. The margin between winning championship race and watching your teammates celebrate. It's that thin sometimes. The radio frustration was understandable. What wasn't understandable was how badly his car behaved on Saturday in qualifying. That setup issue in qualifying, it needs to be answered before Miami. Oscar Piastri, a revelation, his first race start of the season. He missed Australia with a crash, missed China due to a technical issue, and he goes P2 in Japan. McLaren, they are not done, not remotely. While Max and Red Bull, there's a moment from this race that perfectly summarizes Max Verstappen's 2026 so far. He'd been stuck behind Pierre Gasly's Alpine for what felt like an eternity. Finally he found a way through. At the final chicane, 7th place, finally. 1 lap of peace, except he'd burned every last unit of that battery making that move. Gasly, fresh deployment loaded, came back past him on the start finish straight. Like Verstappen was just standing still. What did Max do? He waved him. And out of the cockpit, a slow, sarcastic wave. 4-time world champion, waving goodbye to a position he held for approximately 12 seconds. Gasly ended up finishing 0.3 seconds ahead of Verstappen, 7th to his 8th. After a battle that went literally to the checkered flag, Verstappen explained it afterwards. You just can't pass. Well, you can pass, but then you have no battery the next race. So I tried just one time to have a look, and then, yeah, you have no battery. So I was like, see you later. Fans, they probably loved it. The engineers at Red Bull, presumably, did not. And when asked about his future, Verstappen was candid. When you're finishing 8th and not really enjoying the formula around it, it stops feeling natural. It stops feeling like what he wants to do. He's not screaming ultimatums, but questions are there. They're getting louder. Leclerc and Ferrari, another podium, solid. But where's Hamilton? He was P6. The gap between the Ferrari drivers becoming a story worth watching. So, 3 races, 3 Mercedes wins, a teenager leading the championship, crash that should make everyone at FIA lose sleep. Max Verstappen waving sarcastically from a position he held for 12 seconds. 2026 Formula One, ladies and gentlemen, we asked for drama. Got by a bucket load. Bahrain and Saudi Arabia are off the calendar this year due to the ongoing conflict in Middle East. F1 goes dark for 5 weeks. We will return back at Miami May 1st, sprint weekend. Antonelli, he's 9 points clear, carrying the momentum and carrying the record books as well. And maybe the most quietly significant thing that happened this weekend wasn't on the track at all. FIA reducing energy deployment in qualifying with unanimous manufacturer agreement is a small thing technically, but symbolically, it's enormous because what it means is the people who wrote these regulations, they are now admitting it in real time that something is not right. Bearman's crash, Verstappen waving sarcastically to Gasly while getting passed by him. Drivers unable to go flat out in qualifying. These aren't teething issues. They're structural issues. And the FIA, to their credit, they do appear to be finally listening. Driver working groups, manufacturer summits, commitment to further discussions. Whether that translates into something meaningful before someone seriously gets hurt, that's the question that follows F1 to Miami. And I genuinely cannot wait. If you're new here, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. See you in Miami. This was The Art of Motor Racing.